Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this installment of Business Break. Today, we're going to be talking about options for exiting a business. I'm Tess Slayton, and this is my colleague, Emma Banfield. She's going to discuss some things near the end of the seminar, and I'm going to open with a few different ways that you can exit your business, chiefly through selling your business, winding up, or through bankruptcy. So for today's episode, it's really important to note that, of course, there are many legal considerations that go into each of these options, and we'd really encourage you to get tailored legal advice for each of them. We can't possibly cover everything that we want to in a 15-minute presentation, so this presentation is really geared towards a high-level overview of what options you might look at in deciding whether or not you want to exit a business and how you might do that. Every business, of course, has a life cycle, and at some point you might be interested in winding up, getting out, retiring, or moving on. So we'll talk about the three options that are most commonly used tools to get out of your business. Number one would be selling your business. Number two, winding up, and number three, bankruptcy. So you've decided that you'd like to sell all or part of your business. You found a purchaser, and now you really need to decide how to structure the transaction. Usually the mechanics of how your business will be sold depends both on you and the purchaser's intentions for going forward with the business. And of course, based on advice from your legal and tax consultants. Again, it's important to note here that this presentation is really geared towards you getting out of your business. So the considerations here are geared towards the seller's viewpoint. In most cases, each consideration that we'll discuss in the next slide will be different from the perspective of an individual purchasing the business as opposed to you, the seller. If you're in the seat of the buyer as opposed to the purchaser, you might want to check out our website, www.rmrf.com/news, and there may be some resources that are applicable to you. Failing that, of course, you can reach out to any of our lawyers at the firm to talk about what you want to think about when you are buying a business as opposed to selling it. So first is a share sale. In this type of transaction, a business is sold as a package. All assets, contracts, and liabilities are taken over, and you must keep running your business up until it is sold. A share sale is less complicated for the seller because all of the assets and liabilities of the business are transferred to the purchaser through the sale of the corporation's shares. The purchaser might be resistant to enter into this type of transaction because they really buy the business as it is, as a whole, which includes all of the liabilities as well as the assets. You get to walk away from the business and you get to walk away from your liabilities when the buyer takes those on. So there may be some legal considerations that you negotiate with the buyer, such as price adjustments or indemnifications if the buyer doesn't want to assume the risk to the extent that there is any. Another consideration here is employees. As a seller, you'll want to ensure that the purchaser offers new employment to each of the employees because, of course, the buyer could then become responsible for paying severance or terminating all of the existing employees at a price point higher than he or she would like if the business was to be incorporated on his or her own. If the buyer doesn't want to assume all of the employees, you might be required to terminate those employees and then pay severance pay to those employees who will not carry on with the business. Keep in mind the land, vehicles, and security that attaches to all of the assets in the business will also be transferred to the purchaser. It's important to check your loan agreements and be aware of whether a change in ownership and control will have any impact on your business's loans. Finally, and of course, there's significant tax implications to both an asset and a share sale option. It's best to consult with your accounting advisor in combination with your lawyer to determine the best course for you. So an asset sale is a little bit different in that the seller and the buyer are at liberty to choose which assets of the business to include in the transaction. The seller is going to retain the liabilities and the control of the shares and essentially the control of the business. An asset sale involves selling all or some of the business's assets to the purchaser. These assets can be of a tangible nature, such as ownership of land or interest in a lease, vehicles, or equipment. And of course, intangible assets can be included as well, such as the goodwill of the business's name, customer lists, or intellectual property. Once the list of assets is identified, your lawyer will then conduct appropriate searches to confirm that the assets can be sold with free and clear title, which means that there's no third-party interest in those assets, such as a bank or other lender. Then the title is transferred to the purchaser through a number of documents that your lawyer will prepare. An important consideration here is that you retain control of the business, therefore you retain all of the liabilities of the business as well, and you are responsible for continuing to update your minute book, keep your business in good standing with corporate registry until you choose to wind it up, or another option to exit the actual business.
So winding up is another option that you can look at, and it often involves elements of both asset and share purchases. So in the same way that we saw when Tess was talking about selling your business, you're going to sell off the stock, you're going to have to pay off the creditors, and then remaining assets are going to be distributed to partners and to shareholders. But it's important to differentiate winding up from bankruptcy, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. In a winding up situation, usually what happens is there's a resolution passed and then the company ceases to function as normal. So basically it only functions to close itself off, to sell the stock and pay off the creditors. Once all of those steps are completed, then the company is dissolved and it ceases to exist. So looking at a bankruptcy on the next slide, at its most basic, as it says on the slide, what a bankruptcy does is it freezes a company so that another individual called a trustee can come into the business and figure out what the business owns and what it owes. And then the trustee will liquidate the assets, so usually sell them all off, and then pay off the creditors based on a priority. So each creditor will get a proportion of the asset sale from the business. So bankruptcies usually happen when a business owes more than it can pay back and the prospect of turning things around doesn't look very good. And then that's the point at which a business can look at declaring bankruptcy. It's important to remember that bankruptcy is often associated with failure and embarrassment. And that's an important thing to remember going forward, particularly for a business. So usually declaring bankruptcy is the final option when there's no other legal way to get rid of the debts of a business. As opposed to a personal bankruptcy, where an individual can declare bankruptcy and kind of draw a line under their debts and start afresh, this isn't the case for businesses. Generally, declaring bankruptcy will cause irreparable damage to any future attempts to borrow. So it's a way to finish off a business, but it is quite different both from the share asset purchase type of close off and the winding up type of close off. So as we said at the beginning, we understand that no one is tied to their business forever and that you might be interested in moving on and leaving the business behind. So the purpose of this presentation was to give you a basic overview of 3 of the most common options available to make that happen. As a reminder, always make sure to read any documents associated with selling or winding up or declaring bankruptcy very carefully. We hope that this presentation gives you some information on some of the options we presented here and that this helps you make your business a success. And thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.